Good morning, everybody. Delighted to see you all back. We've got 4 talks in this session, and the first one is using AI tools in a virtual desktop for transcription and translation. There are 4 speakers in this talk, so we might be doing a bit of a microphone shuffle. It's Yvette Wharton, Toby Johnson, Noel Zeng, Nidhi Gowdra, and Sean Matheny, and I'll pass it on to Yvette.
Kia ora koutou. Hello, everybody. Today we're presenting the work that we've done to create a transient virtual desktop for transcription and translation. And it's specifically using Nectar. I think some of you would have heard about Nectar over the last few days, and our Nectar virtual desktop service at the Centre for eResearch. So we're going to tell you a little bit about the need. I'm going to go through that. Noel's going to talk through the process. Sean's going to talk a bit about the infrastructure, and Toby's going to talk a couple of slides on some training. Interviews. They're a really important part of research, and traditionally the options were you paid someone, which could be quite expensive, or you did it manually, which took a bunch of time. And then sometimes it was like, oh, we'll use some random tool and do something a little bit hacky. And recently, through the workshops we've run and just people coming to us, we've had a lot of questions about the new capabilities in AI and what people can use in AI to do transcription. People want something that's simple, easy to use, useful to them, but also considers the ethics, the data sovereignty, and meets our university security needs. So a lot of the tools out there that people were coming and asking about aren't actually, they don't fit all of those needs. So we thought, let's do something for our researchers. What can we do? So the existing options, they can do stuff on their local machine. They can download tools, run them locally as long as they don't talk out to the big wide world and publish a whole lot of information. Useful, but it does tie up your computer, and it also still has to be approved software that people can download. We can get it on a virtual machine, so we have various virtual compute options. So a researcher can request a virtual machine, install a bunch of stuff on it and use that. That helps them access something in a very familiar way, a familiar desktop environment. And then there's sort of using cloud services. But they need to be university approved and they have some privacy considerations and costs. So our pilot began thinking, what can we do that creates something that is transient, uses approved cloud services within our environment and is hosted locally. We did a scan. We have a project database where when we set things up and we work with researchers, we collect a whole bunch of information about the projects. And so we did a scan of that and looked at different categories of where people had said they were doing stuff, using storage for doing transcription or doing interviews. And we came up with a bunch of categories. I won't talk through them, but generally we have transcription that's everywhere. And sometimes it's using handheld recorders, sometimes it's a group of speakers together. It's often using jargon of some sort, terminology, or people speaking different languages. So it's everywhere and messy. So I'm going to hand over to Noel to talk about what we did in the process.
So having understood a bit about what our users might need from the transcription service, we started looking at the wrappers, the front-end graphical wrappers for the open source transcription models that we've seen. So we needed these to be easy to use to cater to researchers of all technical abilities, and that led us to test three programs, Vibe, Buzz, and A-Train. They each had their own strengths, and in the end we chose Vibe because it allowed the user to assign speaker labels in their recordings, and also Buzz, where you can queue up multiple recordings, which will be important for people who've come back from a field trip and have collected multiple recordings. We also tested 3 variants of Whisper, which was the state-of-the-art speech-to-text model. And, next slide. We had a few audio recordings with a human-created transcript that were in English and also te reo Māori. For each of the tests, we recorded the time it took to transcribe and process that document, as well as the character error rate, which is the percentage of characters each model got wrong, lower obviously being better. And they all performed quite well on English, but they were pretty terrible with te reo Māori. And in the end, we decided to use Whisper CPP for Vibe as it's more compatible with it. And Faster Whisper, which is the fastest, was available in Buzz. So having worked out what we want to build, we started working with the Nectar core services team, and a big shout out to that team, especially Andy Botting and Stephen Crawley. They were really helpful and really responsive to our questions. So we use the virtual desktop service in Nectar, which is something that allows you to basically launch a virtual machine and connect to it using a browser-based RDP client, which allows our researchers to launch it, and then they will see a desktop environment in their browser tab. They can then upload their transcription file, the file that needs to be transcribed, and use Vibe and Buzz to transcribe. The good thing about the virtual desktop service is that it is deprovisioned after a set amount of time. So that means if they're not going to use it, if they're done with it, it will be shut down and the resources freed up, which is great because that's one of the big problems with these resources. So to develop this desktop image, we first worked on it locally on our computers. Once it was ready, we uploaded it. We sent the code for code review, and then that's published on the test environment. And then finally, when our testing is complete, it's deployed on the production environment in the VDS, the virtual desktop service. I'll step through each one of those. So the first thing we did was working on it locally. So for creating these images, the Ansible playbooks is used. So if you're not familiar with Ansible playbook, there's a sample of what we wrote on the right. It's basically a fancy shell script. And it allows you to sort of copy files around, make network operations, and also use arbitrary shell commands if you need to. This is then built using Packer into a QCOW2 virtual machine image file. So that once that's deployed to production, it will be the golden image, which means every time the user launches the instance, a copy will be made out of this file, and the virtual machine is launched with it. We've also used Vagrant for local testing, which allowed us to build that image file locally and connect to it. So once we're happy with what we've done, we submitted it to the Nectar Garrett code review platform. Again, thanks to the team for, going through the code and giving us suggestions. Once we've passed that review, Stephen set up a Jenkins pipeline to build the image for us, which is then uploaded to the test environment. So this is kind of a environment where we can play around with the desktop and figure out how much resource is needed. So we can adjust the amount of CPU cores and RAM allocated to each instance. It's also helpful for us to create screenshots and write our description in this environment. And finally, once that's all worked out, we pushed it to production, I think, late last year. And it's now available in any, I guess, to the whole Nectar community. So that means if your institution is participating in Nectar, they can create an instance of the virtual desktop environment, well, the transcription virtual desktop. And we're very happy to report that we've had about 70 instances of this desktop being launched since we put it in production. And this, I think, is a couple months old, so probably have a bigger number as well. Cool. I'm going to pass to Sean for the infrastructure side of things.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Noel. So on the infrastructure side, it's really important anywhere in the world, but particularly in New Zealand, I think, to leverage existing platforms, not reinvent every wheel as we go. We were really fortunate to be able to leverage Nectar and the ARDC with this service which already existed. So a lot of the complexity is managed by the core services team in Melbourne. It's basically a web service, a database, OpenStack, load balancer on the Melbourne end. And then as we get to the node level, it's pretty much launched, these desktops are launched like any normal virtual machine. There's an Apache Guacamole VM in every availability zone in the Nectar Cloud, of which there's 10 now. And there's a load balancer, all orchestrated through OpenStack. So the Bumblebee interface it's really just a fancy launcher. It's under the hood, it's no different than it's just launching a VM and providing kind of a secure pathway to get there. It's more secure because it requires single sign-on. And you can't SCP files to it. It's not open. There's no ports open to the internet. And it's got the shorter lifespan. So in addition to freeing up resources, as Noel pointed out, also we're dealing with sensitive data here. So if someone transcribes a medical transcription that's sensitive and forgets to delete it, well, if they don't use it in a week or two, then it goes away automatically. So that's another positive aspect. We've got the Nectar guys did some fancy code to give geographical affinity. So if you log in New Zealand, it will automatically look at your email address in the single sign-on to Akiri and launch it locally, so that it reduces the chance of you launching elsewhere, which you might probably not want to do with sensitive information in Australia. We're looking at backing this with GPUs, like probably T4 GPUs. We meant to do it end of last year, but it didn't happen. Everything was a bit too busy, but we're looking to absolutely roll that out this year. So stay tuned. And anybody who's eligible to use Nectar, as Noel said, can launch these. There's no approval required. There's no vetting. You can just log in and launch it. And there's the web address. And I'll hand over to Toby.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. So the training we offered, we actually received funding for sort of a broad package of training related to using AI in research. And this was one of those 5 workshops that we offered. Those workshops also came with sort of a related page on our Research Hub, which is our researcher-facing website that just includes information that you can go to without necessarily having to visit to attend a workshop. So you can see on the right, we've got some more of the workshops that we have offered and will be offering in the future. But really, the training had sort of 2 main objectives. As Noel said, we hadn't rolled out the transcription service until the end of last year. So we wanted to really just inform researchers, because we knew that they would be using AI tools for transcription regardless, and they probably had their own preferred tools. So we needed to really cover all the bases related to that, and we needed to inform them of any policies that they needed to pay attention to. A lot of them just wanted some sort of cost-benefit analyses for different tools and any potential risks that they might have to look out for, because obviously, as we've said, with transcription, it's often sensitive data, and so there's some compliance and some policy issues there that you have to look after. And then the training sort of morphed as we got later into the year, and that's when we started to include some more sort of user guides on how to actually use the service that we're offering. And so, yeah, it was sort of a process of that changed throughout the year. So we had really high demand for the training. We ran it 4 times throughout the year to over 350 researchers. The 2 articles, so the transcription page on the Research Hub and the just sort of sign up to the workshop page, they received over 4,000 views. So I think it was among sort of our top 5 most viewed articles. And we found really strong engagement from everyone who attended as well. So at the start of 2025, there wasn't much policy guidance around using AI at the university. So a lot of researchers who attended really just wanted some more concrete guidance, and they could get a little bit of that from us. And then we also found that there was just a really strong need to get some information upon sort of what tools we would recommend and what their best use cases for and things like that. So it was a really successful training from our standpoint. And back to Yvette.
So we learnt lots in the process. Some of it was about understanding how different applications and the different models are going to behave in the virtual desktop environment. Having really useful, easy, reproducible installation steps makes your life way easier. I think talk to Noel about that. We haven't discussed it, but we also developed a set of user documentation that links in with the virtual desktop, so how to use the virtual desktop, how to use the tools inside the virtual desktop. It's useful to consider what you need to have pre-configured and downloaded, so the model's sitting on the machine downloaded, so people don't have to wait for them to download. You know, various versions of that speech recognition. And finally, whenever you build something, you have to think about the need to update it. We are working on it, evolving it, and hopefully, as Sean mentioned, not too distant future, we'll have some GPUs, and actually after Suzanne's talk on Tuesday morning, we're going to have some conversations with them about bringing what we can do with them to help our researchers. So thank you so much for listening. There is a GitHub link there if you're interested. We're all happy to take questions. I'm going to do a little plug for the Research Data Management Survey for anyone who was either in the BOF on Tuesday or is keen to give your thoughts. There's a tiny URL at the top there. We're keen to get as many responses as possible. But thank you, and yeah, love to hear your thoughts. I should also say there was a wide team of people, not just the 4 of us standing up here, who did stuff, testing it, building it, creating pages, all sorts.
Are you getting any user pushback on virtual desktops? Are you okay with it? Double-click, open a web browser?
Yep, and that is, I mean, we have other options that you can definitely use, but our focus here was a lot of our researchers that are using these tools are not native computer people. So they're not coders, and so something that was really simple was really important, and the desktop people have come back to us and said, we really love it.
Please.
Well, amazing job first. With regards to, if I understood correctly, so everything's running on CPUs, did you have any feedback from users about the speed of transcription? Yeah, what was their feedback on that? Was it okay for what they wanted to do?
You did the benchmark.
It is slower than GPU. I think the fact that it can run in the background, you know, and in a different computer means that they just have to wait for it.
So how does it work for the background? Because you mentioned one of the 2 tools can do batching, right? So is it like the scientists can go, do their batching, then go away, and come back the next day? It's there in the same instance?
Yeah. So there's basically you can upload multiple files, and then they'll just work on one at a time. And they can come back, log back in. And, yeah.
There's a number of solutions for this out there right now, right? And some are better than others. Right now, you can do it on your laptop, which requires you to keep your laptop on, which this doesn't. You can let it run overnight or whatever. You can run it in the cloud services. There's plenty of those, whether it's even sometimes running on your laptop, it's going to a cloud. And that is not ideal for all the sensitive data reasons and everything. So this is kind of, it's just another option, and it's kind of an easy win, we think.
And yeah, the virtual desktop, you can kind of come out of it and it will keep doing its thing. So, and then it stays up for sort of 7 days live, so you can log back into it. And at any point you can go, yeah, I'm finished, and get rid of it.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
You good?
One way or another.
Our next talk, and this is the talk before the break, this is Artificial Intelligence Ready for Rigorous Reviews from Dr. Erin Wood.
1 second while I get my mic. Kia ora koutou, ko Erin Wood taku ingoa. I am part of the Student and Scholarly Services, which has consumed our library at the university, but I previously come from a research background, so literature reviews was always something that was really a struggle for me, maybe when I was doing my PhD before we had all these interesting tools that are coming out. But when it comes to AI, I'm really impressed at the moment. For the last 3 days, 2.5 days, we've been hearing all these wonderful technical things, and I would probably say that I'm more of a consumer than a developer, so you can expect a different pace of information from this session today, but potentially, it's a light touch before the break. So at the beginning of the week, we had a bit of a joke that any seminar that starts with a question, the answer is always no. So is AI ready for rigorous reviews? And the answer is no. You can leave now. But of course, there's always, with AI, it's not really no, it's a not yet, what's coming around the corner. And also for literature reviews specifically, it's also a maybe, maybe it's also ready depending on what you're doing. And, that's the parentheses that I missed out, is it depends. As far as where we're at the moment, there's been a lot of evidence coming out around a lot of large language models and the efficacy of those for different tasks within a literature review methodology. But the problem with these is that the models are changing so quickly and developing so fast. Our validation studies and then the reviews of those to collate that information to get a consensus on how effective they are, that's lagging behind. However, there are tools coming out that are in the automation of literature reviews. Elicit is one of them, and that they promise such high time savings, 80%, with a really high accuracy rate compared to human reviewers as well. And then there's another one, AutoSR, and that's outcompeted the human reviewers in these reviews as well. So, the technicality of the technical capability is there, but what the hurdles are these things around methodological rigor and the data corpus that it has access to. So when it comes to reviews, depending on what kind of review you're doing, the key aspects of a quality review is replicability, transparency, and reliability. And there's a few issues when it comes to using AI for these sorts of things. So stochastic nature of searching, and then for reliability, any of the claims for a large language model, how do you take steps to verify that? And then when it comes to those high quality methodologies, things like systematic review and meta-analyses, most of those methods are tried and true, validated, and endorsed by authority bodies like Cochrane. Those validations are lagging behind. Cochrane hasn't necessarily got much to say yet on one tool over another. So, how we get there to establish an established methodology that incorporates AI is not there yet. And then the point here is that this is different across different review types. We're talking, for particularly rigorous reviews, meta-analyses, systematic reviews, those tools necessarily aren't ready, but if you're doing a more fluid narrative review or a different methodology in a different discipline that doesn't require that same level of evidence synthesis or holistic comprehensive search, then maybe it is appropriate to start using tools for that methodology. And then I've been really impressed with how the people we've heard from this week have been incorporating their literature review into their research workflows. We've heard about cell modelling that uses literature to train their AI models. This morning was Asgard and using literature to map rare disease genes. It's really great. But when you hear that as a librarian, you kind of wonder, how did you get access to that information? A lot of data that is from literature is sitting behind paywalls with subscriptions through publishers. So when it comes to accessing the information that's locked up behind paywalls, that's kind of one of those red flags that we have when we are the ones negotiating the library licenses. How is that information being transmitted? And are we actually following copyright, all the licenses that we have with these publishers? What kinds of issues around that do we face? And if we limit access, of course, I'm a proponent of open access and making this data available for research workflows, but also literature reviews openly. But what if we don't have that and you want a fully comprehensive literature review? Missing information introduces biases on top of what you might get through your AI tool or pre-existing biases in the literature. Limiting the access to certain literature was going to introduce new biases. So if we're talking about no, not yet, but also maybe, what are we actually saying to our researchers that come to the library for this guidance around AI and literature reviews? And again, impressive technical minds here this week. Most people are not at your level. So, we begin our sessions by asking, how familiar are you with the idea of AI and literature reviews? Most people say they don't know anything or they have very little knowledge. And they're really at the starting point, let alone also the knowledge that they have around literature review methodologies. A lot of the people we're talking to are doctoral candidates that are coming through their first year. They don't really know what they're doing, but we're trying to help them through it. And when it comes to AI, it's really just getting them started and getting them introduced to the concerns as well as the opportunities around it. So when we look at the methodology, the literature review methodology, we do have a few suggestions, and it's really basic stuff. It's really engaging with large language models. We look at Gemini a lot through the university's enterprise subscription, so it's quite good for basic introductions. And we get them to start exploring literature and getting source-based information through deep research reports and getting them to think about how they would verify those claims and then follow up on sources provided to expand upon what the output was. When it comes to search strategy, we suggest that they start building up a database search strategy, because at this point of time, we still believe that they need to do database searches alongside of any other methodology that incorporates automatic or AI-enabled searching. So, getting started with using a large language model for that. But then we also go into the emerging bespoke tools for literature discovery, and things like, for search strategy development. So Bond University has Terra, and there's a lot of wealth of tools for things like troubleshooting and translating across different databases, a search string that you might develop and improve on from the AI beginning. When it comes to literature discovery, there are specific search tools, so things like Elicit, Undermine, and SciSpace, and there's more and more of these are coming out. Again, this is in addition to traditional searching, probably more so, because of those access issues that these tools have to paywalled articles. We still encourage them to engage with the library databases and things like that. And then also the idea of building upon seed articles, the highly relevant articles, through citation tracking and semantic matching tools like ResearchRabbit and Litmaps. Screening is a really labour-intensive kind of step that a lot of researchers, especially early career researchers, are intimidated because they have thousands of results maybe, and how are they going to get through them? When it comes to using AI, it's a real opportunity to do a lot of heavy lifting. Again, we encourage more of the human-in-the-loop sort of situation where there's Terra has a tool for automated screening, but there's a human verification of those AI decisions at the endpoint. And then there's also active learning models that will, rather than automating the screening, will preload or front load the queue that you're reviewing based on the decisions that you've made previously to try and push the most relevant literature first. It was basically a human-in-the-loop way of doing things a little bit easier than what you potentially were doing before, which was just going through everything randomly. So the two steps that are the most difficult to sort of instruct around because of the copyright issues and licensing issues that we, see as being a bit, of a grey area until we get, more information from publishers around this, is what you do with data extraction and synthesis, because you can only really get good quality data extraction or synthesis based on full texts. So uploading those full texts is kind of the issue that we have, is around what is it, how do we comply with copyright and with our library licenses to actually get that information into a tool that will then help us do these steps. And right now, it's unfortunately we're more or less telling people that you still need to maintain manual data extraction, just because we don't necessarily want to lose access to our library databases and upset the bee's nest or the beehive. And then when it comes to synthesis, it's kind of like, rather than doing the work for you, it's how can you leverage it to improve your own argument by improving the coherency of your argument or seeing if there's any flaws in your logic. And then also we come through here being like, these sort of, anything that's to do with any kind of claim that it pulls from an article, there's a high risk of hallucination, and what are you going to do around verifying that information against the source that you got it from? So from our sessions with our early career researchers, we really encourage people to start exploring and investigating what's out there, but doing it with a critical lens. So thinking about, the purpose of a review, where is it going? Is it going to be published? Is it for your thesis? What kind of policy and regulations do you need to comply with around your particular use case? And when it comes to the methodology of your review, how rigorous do you need to be? Is it appropriate, if you're doing a systematic review or a meta-analysis, to use a tool that's not necessarily as transparent or reliable or replicable as you need it to be? We also ask them to reflect on the idea of what are you standing to gain or lose? Of course, there's time savings, but the issue around skill loss, and especially when it's literature review, where you actually not only do the work to produce an output, but you're also gaining valuable critical reading skills and knowledge of your discipline. What are you standing to lose or gain in those areas? Time saving versus your development as a researcher. And then with everything that right now we're seeing improvements when it comes to the quality of how these AI tools are performing for literature review tasks. But those extra steps, what are those that you need to do for an output to develop an output, verify the sources, build upon those claims to make sure it's contextualized to your particular research or to the environment that you're working in. We've already heard this week how bad it is today. So what's the New Zealand context that you need to compensate for in these tools that don't necessarily have your expertise in your area and your nation? So the other thing that we kind of encourage them to do is to keep an eye out on the horizon. Everything's changing, there's new stuff coming, and keep an ear to the ground. Keep an eye on what is coming out of your institution. So, new graduate regulations around doctoral research and AI, what's coming next for the tools and also for policy and guidance. So the last thing that I kind of wanted to do, because it was a nice touch, was to tautoko Suzanne at the beginning of the week and all those others that shared their song throughout this week. So I was hoping, if you know it, join me with Te Aroha. And there's 2 verses, so if you don't know it, I'm hoping you'll join me for the second one. But otherwise, thank you for listening, and I'll begin. Te Aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi mari e tātou tātou e. Te aroha. I'm so bad at singing. Te whakapono, me te rangi mari e tātou tātou e. And that's probably the last time I'm going to sing in public now. Thank you.
That was delightful. Do we have any questions? Something back here?
So I have a question. You know, in principle, a lot of the problems that you discussed wouldn't really exist if we just used local agentic AI, because pretty much the whole idea is that it could do the request that the researcher can do, right? So it could access our information, could access the articles that the researcher has access to. So I was wondering, you know, is there anything we could do in that respect, or how does it compare to the kind of tools you've been looking at?
Yeah, so there are actually a few ways you could go around it. I think there's some interest in doing like local closed systems that would enable you to use literature in a way that doesn't make a copy that is then used for training and things like that. And a lot of New Zealand copyright notices, copy licensing around private research and studies allows to make copies for private research and study. But it's also like how that agrees with licenses, and I think anyone who's read a library license is sort of familiar that this language is kind of out of date when it comes to how AI, scrapes text or things like that. So it's a little bit of a lag between what's happening and the tools that are coming out and, agentic AI in a local system and the terminology that the library license has to sort of, what that means as far as limiting use of literature. And I think, the publishers are aware of these things, and there's been a big push to sort of integrate some of the, commercial tools through systems like LibKey to enable people to access their institutional subscription databases within these platforms. So, you log in through your university, you can access all that wealth of information, but inside of that platform. And it's only really coming out recently that this is sort of the way that things are going, and I think most of us would be like, of course, that's obvious. Get those talk together, but it's coming out now. So again, it's the the eye to the horizon and the ear to the ground to see what's coming.
Yeah, I think it would be sort of a call for us because we can do that locally, right? I mean, if we run it, then it's just the same as you on a computer running it, right? So there's no legal issue. So it's something we could maybe.
Again, it's definitely around the wording of a library license. So I think in part it's when we have someone that's wanting to do some sort of like literature-based project, it's like a recommendation is to talk to the copyright officer, your advisor in your institution that will help you with the copyright, but also probably talk to your collections and access team at the library around licensing and what that really means in relation to, to subscription database access and the impact that would have on, other users at the university of that database. Because, if we don't want to like lose access and cause disruption for everybody. Sorry, yeah. Otherwise?
I think we're done.
Oh.
Do you have concerns that publishers are trying to actively undermine some of these moves? Like Illicit, for example, like I know that uses data from OpenALX, and like Elsevier just recently got them to remove a whole bunch of affiliations that were scraped from their websites, for example.
I mean, we can go down the rabbit hole of how bad capitalism is for open science, but yeah.
It seems like they're actively trying to undermine these new sort of literature review tools.
Yeah.
And so you might use it, if you used it like 6 months ago and you use it now, you might get quite different results from your using those tools.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, it is like, the commercialization of research data and, publishers taking their piece of the pie, and what that means for us as researchers is unfortunate. But hopefully when it comes to things like the LibKey integrations and, making more systems talk to each other, then we can get that information unlocked. The fact that it has to be locked in the beginning, plug for publishing open access is probably, the library and thing to do.
They want to still fragment it in terms of...
Yeah. Well, they want you to use Scopus AI or, their own product, but, I think there'll be quite a bit of pushback when it comes to that. Anyone else? Otherwise, break time? Break time. Thank you.
Part 2, 10 to 12.